Welcome back to another episode of the Downsizing Roadmap Podcast with your hosts, Jody Roscoe and Heather Fisher. We're talking about all things downsizing, from our own experiences with clients to guest experts. Let's make downsizing easier, one conversation at a time.
Hi, welcome back to Downsizing Roadmap Podcast. We are going to revisit one of our favorite things to do today and do a little book review of a downsizing book that we have both read and enjoyed, The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning.
Yep.
Struggle with that word, but I will get it.
I'm Jody Roscoe.
I'm Heather Fisher.
Yeah, so this book was written by Margareta Magnusson. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And she wrote all about Swedish death cleaning, which sounds terrifying.
Yes.
A little bit. Sounds very
the name
brutal.
Is overwhelming. But what we found in going through the book is that this is, a process, gets its name from a concept in Sweden where you are doing this cleaning out of your belongings. Sometimes that is at the end of life as you're preparing not to leave this for those that come after you to deal with. But she addresses in the book that it can definitely be at other big, changes of seasons of life that it's great to do at any time. Yeah,
I think that, it sounds so like, oh my gosh, but actually it's the opposite. It's a really interesting mindset. Thought process through it, and I think it's very purposeful and warm and funny and really human the way that she talks about it. And she also seems like a really interesting person. She describes herself as somebody between 80 and 100.
Yes.
And she has very, very strong ideas about how everything should be.
As with any lady, never ask your age. You just get the range there, take that. One of the things I liked, just the aim of the book or of this process, she mentions that, all of us have collected so much wonderful stuff in our lives, and nobody but you can evaluate or take care of that meaning of it.
Which I think is so true. And I think that we have a lot of people that we hear, they're like, I'm just going to let my kids deal with it. And her process and mindset, or this process and mindset, is really about sharing the reasons why you've kept those things and what that looks like. And your kids can't deal with it because they don't know those things. And so your kids are going to be like, this means nothing to me. And so it means, it's going to go, versus hearing, what it means to you because you're the one who collected it.
Yeah. And in in that time where, any one of us may have passed and someone is dealing with it, if what they come across is, your legacy and the things that you loved, that, is a help to them as they're sad and as they're dealing with so much around that, versus just a burden that they can't face that potentially just gets taken to the trash in reality because it hasn't been valued, and nobody but you can put that meaning and value on so much of it.
I mean, that was honestly me. Like, my mom's house, she had so much stuff, and I knew a lot of stories about a lot of the things, but there's a lot of things that I didn't know the stories about, and it was totally overwhelming when I was sad and hard to deal with, and it took way longer than it should have because I didn't want to go over there and deal with it. And I didn't get to hear all the stories from her mouth. I didn't get to hear them because that's not something we did. So I would love to change that for other people because I think it can really bring your family together. And I think this mindset is a really an interesting and useful one.
Yeah, she also mentions here towards the beginning of the book that, when you go through this process, you're also getting the reward of revisiting these parts of your life that you might not have seen for a while or thought about, and whether that is just going through it by yourself and making those decisions that are easier, or going through it and sharing those stories. We've all lived storied lives with
Right.
so much that has happened to each of us and things that we forget until we see those reminders. And so, it's not, you can let go of it, but you can still enjoy that moment of going through it and revisiting, vacations you might have taken or, times in life that have long passed. I think that's a really great way to look at it as something you want to do versus a chore.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this in other episodes. I went through my high school box of stuff with my, dead corsages and things that were still in there.
Yeah.
And there was a couple things that I was like, oh, I remember this. And I, turned to my daughter and I told stories of, what that was. And that was fun. And that brought back memories that I hadn't thought about in a really long time. And it's not that I need to keep that. I didn't keep the, corsage remnants, but
Yeah.
But it does bring back all that stuff. So what is death cleaning really? So it's oh gosh, what is that word? So death is der in Swedish, and I can't read my writing. Stadning.
Yes.
Städning. Städning is cleaning, so döstädning, and it's something that they do in Sweden all the time, and it's something that is part of their culture, and so I think that's really interesting. It's not literally cleaning; it's not dusting and mopping and cleaning. It's a form of organization that makes your day run smoothly. So we're not going to talk about like the how-to of actually getting rid of things. It's really more of a mental thought process, organization, and how you kind of go through your life with things.
Yeah. And it just makes you ready for the next phases for sure.
And with the thought process that your kids aren't going to have to do it, and you aren't going to leave it to them to do for your loved ones, and living lighter now, preparing for later.
Yeah, absolutely. You just don't want that chaos that makes it an unhappy moment when someone has to deal with your stuff in a way that they never should have had to because you should have handled it yourself. She also talks a lot about how you should start this process way early, which is something we say all the time. She's saying, when you're turning 65 or, start then.
Sooner even.
Yeah, it could be sooner, could be through other life changes, but start this process of going through so that you have time to do it at your pace and do it in the right way, which, definitely is something we say often.
I think in America, we're very much like keep everything just in case culture. We do have that. And I think, a lot of that, especially in our older, my grandparents, lived through the Depression when they were little, and my grandpa kept everything because you might need it. And so that mindset, I think, from that time has trickled down to us, even though we are living in a let's tear down kind of a mode right now. I think that mindset is still in us a lot, and so this is a different mindset, which is just kind of curating what matters. We just did a podcast on design, and this is the same idea as that, only this is more legacy based. I think they go hand in hand, though. Combine, what is actually mattering to you, and not just keeping everything because you own it and you.
Yeah, when you can make that final shift to keeping the things that make your emotions happy and your life easier, you will. When you're living in that emotional state, you won't need as much as you think you do when you're just kind of clinging to things because you own them or because you once liked them.
Yeah.
If you can really get in touch with those feelings around it, you'll find you need a lot less than you think.
Yeah.
So when she talks here in the chapter on how to begin, she's definitely saying what we already know. Start with easier spaces. She mentions the closets, the basements, the attics, things you're not attached to as much. And if you do have things in there that have been in there for ages, she says, many of the things you have in storage have probably been standing there for ages. You may even have forgotten what it is you have, what what it is you have there. Good for you, because you will now realize that you will not miss anything if you throw it away.
Right. She says, start with the forgotten things, the stuff you don't care about. And that will be easy, a totally easy start, because you don't care about them. You haven't looked at them in years.
Yeah. And if it's so forgotten that those words come out of your mouth, oh my gosh, I forgot I even had this. That's an easy thing to
I think sometimes people get stuck in that, though. They'll go down an emotional rabbit hole because they haven't seen it in a long time, and they're like, oh, maybe I need this again. And so then back to some of our other episodes, where's it going to live? Because if it's in a box in your storage unit or, your storage area, then, it's not serving any purpose. So it's okay if you uncover things that you actually remember that you want, but a lot of it's going to be stuff that you actually don't want.
Yeah. Yeah. She definitely mentions, don't start with the hard stuff. Don't start with photographs or personal papers. Don't start down that emotional memory lane rabbit hole, because you'll never get out of it to get to the easy stuff.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I think she dedicates a whole chapter to that at the end, but it's intentionally at the end, should be one of the last things.
And I think what that can do is build momentum. We've talked about building momentum a lot, and build momentum, and maybe give you a little bit of an emotional breakthrough of like, hey, I don't really need all this stuff. Like, it'll kind of give you that.
Yeah. Yeah. And she talks here about the intention is not that we're just getting rid of everything. It really is about making our lives pleasant and more comfortable. And I feel that sometimes just in my life, going into people's homes that I know, or times we've gone to clients' house where there's just so much stuff that the home is not functioning. There's not a place to sit down and look at paperwork or,
eat.
Yeah, not a place to eat or to, have enough chairs for the couple people that are there without moving things. So if things have gotten out of hand, that's the way that you're living, we definitely want to help you get on a path where you're just making your day simple and less mentally overwhelming to look at all of that stuff. A home that's reasonably orderly is going to be more comfortable by default.
Less taxing.
Yeah, life is better with less. Okay, so for each person, the categories that you start with, when we say start with easy, we throw out suggestions, but it's not the same for everybody.
True.
So her suggestion is to write down your home's categories. We all have different rooms in our house. We have different things stored in different rooms. If your basement is all of your mom's things and that is a struggle for you, and we casually say, start with the basement. It's easy. Before you do any of it, list your own home's categories and prioritize which one might be easy. And start there. Ask yourself that question. Where do I already know there's a lot of things I could get rid of? And build some momentum with your own easy starting point.
And are there areas that are bugging you, like that you're just like, oh, that's been bothering me? Like, pick one of those that's a little bit, you're ready to tackle too, like that you have the energy around.
Yeah, yeah. So her, she gives some sections in here with some quick sorting tips, similar to what we've talked about before, but taking everything out of the closet. She says 2 piles when you take everything out of the closet, and it's immediately pile 1 is for clothes you want to keep, pile 2 is for what you want to get rid of, and start there, immediately give away pile 2, and then go back through pile 1 with more of the evaluating each piece. And so that's that quick swipe through everything, and then before you're putting it back, does it fit? Are there tears and stains? But that emotional first one, just your gut feeling, you might be ready to get rid of more than you think without a lot of talking about it. So let's see, what else? She she was talking about that it's easier to go through your things when your home itself is organized well. So if you are starting this early, those daily habits that we talk about and picking up things at the end of each day and all of that, it's much easier to tackle going, through things in the dark corners of a closet if you have a clear space to pull it out to. So she says, she was talking with someone giving her some tech help. The author is comical through the book.
Yeah, so it's actually very, very
funny. And she's talking about the tech person looking at her home screen on her computer and saying that it was like putting your toilet in the kitchen, like get things organized. So I think that's talking about just grouping things in light categories before you're just diving in and starting.
Yeah, she pokes fun at herself. She's so funny. Like it's a funny book to read.
It's a very easy read.
Yeah, quick read. It's not that big of a book, but it's definitely worth the read.
Yeah, absolutely. She's just a character making, teasing about herself and her kids and, her life in general. But starting with that baseline organization will really help you. We were talking, she had the same reference in here to how many items are in, the average home, that there's so many. And it says, to hunt for misplaced items is never an effective use of your time.
Right.
So definitely back to that organization.
Yep. So she's saying start with the easy stuff and then the emotional stuff comes, right?
Yeah.
And so her thought process around that is to introduce the concept of a throwaway box. I don't know if you have that there, but
the throwaway box is so interesting to me because we've talked about maybe boxes and we've talked about other ways of keeping things, but I think her idea of the throwaway box is that it's the box that you're keeping just for your own enjoyment. You're keeping it might be like your corsage from high school that you've talked about that nobody wants, or cards or letters from somebody that nobody else will know. It's not a family heirloom, but the throwaway box is giving herself permission to just have this one box to pull out and enjoy whenever she wants to. She's curated it down to the things that bring her a smile and, would be irrelevant to her kids going through or the legacy of her or past generations. So she has on the top of this box written, throw away when I die, that's the instruction. And so she is keeping it for her, but she's not burdening with her kids with having to go through and feel like it's important for them to keep.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great concept because there are things that make us all smile from a memory that aren't, are from parts of our life that
it's only your memories. Your kids are not going to smile from that ever. It's not ever going to be.
Right.
They're not ever going to look at their dead corsage from whatever. I did throw it away. But if I really needed it for, that is the kind of thing that would go in the throwaway box, like, because it says it's like stuff for deeply personal and maybe even embarrassing items, but they just need to be thrown away when you're done. And it's one of those things where you're giving yourself permission to maybe irrationally keep some things that really kind of bring you joy for whatever reason that is, but they're not everything needs to be passed down. And I think that's
live on for 200 years.
Yeah, I think that's another one of her concepts is like not everything needs to be passed down. So that doesn't mean you have to get rid of it right this minute, but again, it's a box haul, not a house.
I believe her, the section clarifies about shoebox size.
Yeah.
Like it's not.
Yeah, it's just a little box.
Not the giant Rubbermaid bin.
But not everything does need to be passed down. And so if you want to keep it now because it's meaningful to you and you want to get it out and you're like, my kids aren't going to want it, or, that's okay. So that goes in the throwaway box. Like, we have a maybe box and now we have a throwaway box.
Yeah, and it feels like she's saying the throwaway box is an immediate throwaway, but that note is to the people that come after you. Just honestly, it's a gift to them.
Yeah.
That they know, okay, I don't have to go through this box. It's on here. Throw it away. And that is a gift. It's a better gift than guilt.
Right. And it gives you the thought process as you're going through things to think about, like, what is important to keep for ourselves just because we want it, and what is important to share.
Yeah.
And that's another kind of parameter that you can set around things. Oh, this I would want, this is part of my legacy. It's my recipe book. I want to share it, versus this is just something that reminds me of a time in my life that doesn't mean anything to anybody else.
Right. My middle school journal or whatever.
Right.
Nobody needs to see that.
My diary when I was 7.
Yes. Yes. She also says, which we've mentioned many times, but you can spend time, always hoping and waiting for someone, she's talking about family members here, for someone to want something in your home, but you cannot wait forever. And sometimes you must just give cherished things away. But this is my favorite part of the sentence, with the wish that they end up with someone who will create new memories of their own. And so I think if you look at your donations or, things you give away in different ways other than just passing it all down to your family, and you don't have to ever know what the next person is using it for or their stories around it. But if you imagine, your kitchen table that you loved, and then you pass that on to someone else, you can just picture the new family member, the new family memories that are being made around that table. It doesn't have to be your family memories. It's the heart of the home type things, or, how you're making someone's life easier or something they didn't have before. If you can just, imagine those things a bit, it makes it easier to give away, things that you love. And know that someone else will have stories around it.
Yeah, like a legacy of that, legacy of stories, because remember, stuff's just stuff, right? And so it's the stories. And so if you give it to somebody who then uses it, because again, no stories are happening around things that are packed in boxes somewhere or shoved in the back of closets. There's no more stories. There's no life happening around those things anymore. So when you give it to somebody that you hope will be able to have more stories around it, that is giving it more life.
Yeah, she mentioned, the author mentioned a friend of hers who had a very old desk that they sit around sometimes at the friend's house, and they just imagine, what important business letters or, what letters were written around this desk. I think she said it was a couple 100 years old, mm-hmm. and they're just imagining that past life, but it was something her friend got at a flea market or something. It wasn't a family legacy.
Yeah.
So that's an enjoyable way to look at it.
Yeah.
As you're getting rid of things.
Yeah. And really think about, I get it that you can be so overwhelmed that you're like, ugh, I can't deal with that. I'm just going to let my kids throw it away or deal with it when I'm gone because I can't deal with it. But no matter what, that will be a burden on them. It just will be a burden.
Yeah.
And so, so this thought process is just about loving them enough to not leave them that burden. Like, caring about that, not wanting to leave them that burden, and thinking about it in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of the process, as she went through the death cleaning for herself, it was as part of a move to a smaller place. Mm-hmm. So one important part that she talks about is, making your choices based on that new space. And, we've talked about that before, the design plan and the floor plan, space planning. It's a good, you will likely live for many years to come at the new space, and you want that to be just as comfortable as the home you've loved for a long time. And so make that plan and go through your belongings carefully and ponder, what exactly you want to keep to make that next space comfortable and to work for you, not to be just a not living up to its size recreation of your current home that just doesn't work because you haven't planned it.
Right. And again, who is the future you going to be? And what of these things do you not need, for that next person?
Yeah. Yeah. So moving through the chapters, she talks too about, there was a funny chapter in here about the things you don't want other people after you to go through. So she definitely had some funny stories about other times where she has stepped in for family members after they've passed. I can't remember if it was her mom or an aunt or somebody, but she discovered the hidden stash of cigarettes she never knew were there.
Yeah.
And, learning things about people that they might not have wanted you to learn about.
Right, that is not the legacy they wanted to be
That's not the
leaving.
legacy, and so the chapter in here just goes on. But she says perhaps a nice gift to those loved ones who may be death cleaning for us later would be to reduce these type of belongings a bit before we leave our present life. If you think that anything they might find would cause your loved ones harm or unhappiness, make sure to go through those things while you're still here to do that. So it's definitely an enjoyable read. She's very funny and humorous as she talks through her story of going through this both for family members and for herself. So part of what she was talking about, my notes in here put Jody's favorite line on here, guilt is not a gift. But she's talking about learning early in life to just say no thank you to things.
Yeah, don't even collect them in the first place.
Don't collect them in the first place, and be open to hearing that from somebody that you're trying to give things to. She says that the moment that someone is giving you a gift, to always be thankful and take it with gratitude and, accept a gift when it's being given to you. But when it's more of a choice of something that's being passed on, it's okay to say no thank you. And it's okay if you've been given a gift that just doesn't hit the mark, that people got their emotion around giving the gift and you accepting it graciously, and that moment of exchange is what people like about gift giving. In reality, they're not going to be at your house 20 years later wondering where the vase they got you, why it's not living on the shelf. We put that pressure on ourselves that they're going to be looking for it and notice. But she's saying they really won't.
I love that concept. I love that concept that the joy of the gifting has already happened.
Yeah.
Right? And so now the thing might hit the mark for a while. It might never have hit the mark, whatever that is. But that connection that you had from the gift giving happened in your relationship, and it was a good thing, and continues on.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved that too. And she's giving the permission that we all need sometimes to just be okay with not keeping everything from everyone, and that doesn't change our relationships with them. Those emotions around it happened and will continue to happen. Okay, so next section was talking about just kind of scaling the things that you love down to a more reasonable way of keeping them, like a hobby, talking about having a full vegetable garden versus, keeping what you love and maybe having some potted, like tomatoes grown in a pot or an herb garden. So you're keeping the part that you love without the burden of all the stuff or all of the physical work that comes along with that hobby. You're keeping it in a smaller way. So I think that there are so many ways we could creatively look at the things we love to do. Whether, back to the gardening example, if that was volunteering at a community garden or joining a gardening club, or so many ways that you can keep the passion that you have but you don't need to maintain, an acres large garden or whatever you had.
I think that goes for crafting things and, all of the things that you might have done gung-ho at one point in your life, and now that's not the thing. And so I think it goes in all of those directions. You can pare down in all of that stuff.
Yeah, and share that knowledge with the younger generation, pass that on. So maybe for a time that they're helping you with that, and then you're continuing to scale that down while they're, ramping up and doing more of that. I know, my mom and my daughter both crochet. It skipped me. I don't know how to do that, but I know, I never invested in learning, but, that's wonderful that they do that back and forth. And, my mom will give my daughter, yarn that she's accumulated over the years. So it's going back and forth, but, they can just enjoy it at a smaller scale. So one of the sections we said we would get to, she talks about photos. So the book has a wonderful section on photos. And this goes back, I noticed a part in here that we visited in one of our episodes about the different downsizing personalities.
Yeah.
And so her suggestion, or she's talking about when she gave photos to her family, and she's saying, if you have several children, I think this goes beyond photos, it goes to, all of their personalities around many things, but don't have the expectation that they will all behave the same equally in response to a gift. If you made a photo album for each of them, one may be like, okay. Yeah, set it on a shelf and never look at it again. One might pore over it and ask for stories and, pull out the photos to look at more closely. They will hit different people in different ways. So if you're gifting photos or anything else to your children or to other family or friends, just keeping in mind that they'll receive it in the way that they want to.
That their personality.
Yeah. So one of the instances she's talking about is she had sorted photos into envelopes before a holiday. So she had an envelope for each kid, a packet of photos that were specific to them. And so after dinner, they're still at the table. She passed these packets out and sorted them into envelopes with each of their names on it. She passed them out, and they were all gathered. And she says, at first things were quiet as people opened their envelopes and began to look through their photos. But after a while, I heard the chatter. Wow, look at you. Have you seen this one? Do you remember that? And so it went. It became a lot of fun. When everybody had seen enough, all the sorted photos were again unsorted in one big messy pile. I sorted them one more time and put them in their envelope to give to each child when they visited next, in case they wanted to save them. But she's talking about that evening of sharing them and reminiscing over them and talking amongst each other was more valuable to her than what each child does with that packet of photos. She'll still give it to them, and that is, a perfectly wonderful thing to give them. But if it sits on a shelf and they never look at it, or whether they love it, it doesn't matter, because they had this shared night of talking about the stories of the photos.
Yeah.
So we had a friend tell us something similar after someone had passed, and they all got together to sort through their mom's photos. And those are the memories you want to create versus the expectation of everything being received in the way that you intended. Yeah, so here's where she's talking about the throwaway box, which we talked about.
Keep all of your embarrassing things in there.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and so in summary, I mean, we're really towards the end of the book, but in summary, this process of death cleaning, I won't try the Swedish word again, but this process is as much or more for you as for the people who come after you. There's so many levels of how, this lets your later years or a new phase of life just be easier and calmer and more enjoyable. And you have that peace of mind that everything is handled and ready for others to come after you and know what to do. It's a playbook for them of what to do with your stuff because you've already handled the majority of it. You've told them the stories. You've made notes on what they should do.
If they wanted to keep something, made notes on that kind of thing.
You've given things already that someone may have already told you that they wanted. And then you are just living that carefree.
Yeah.
Things are done, and mentally that is a great place to live.
Yeah, so if you're stuck on your mindset around getting started and all of that, this is a great book to read because she's funny and it's very human. She doesn't take herself too seriously about it. And sometimes I feel like aging is, framed in fear and, worry about what that all is. And this isn't that at all. This feels like she's liberating herself from these things and
giving herself space to live.
Yeah.
In reality.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not putting off the living. I think that's what she was saying. Death cleaning isn't about dying. It's about not putting off living. Live with all of the things. And, she said her husband said he wanted to die with his debts paid and a clean conscience and his house in order. And she thought that was a lovely ambition. So
yeah,
debts paid, clean conscience, house in order.
Yeah, so that's the path we're all on to accomplish that. We hope that we helped you by sharing this book. It's The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning.
Yeah, go get it.
And I would highly recommend it if you're in the midst of trying to find that mindset around downsizing, around going through your things. And, we'll be back with more advice next time. We look forward to talking to you. And thanks for joining us. If you need any resources, they're on our website, downsizingroadmap.com.
Talk to you next time.
Thanks for joining us on the Downsizing Roadmap Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who might need a little downsizing inspiration. Have questions or ideas for future episodes? Reach out to us on our website, www.downsizingroadmap.com. Until next time, let's keep simplifying and moving forward.